Let's switch gears, guys. Talk about something lighter. I ended up applying to 10 schools, and here's how I made my list. First of all, I wanted to be happy. That was my number one priority going into college. I did not want a school that would be insanely cold and miserable, where the academics would crush me. I'd had enough of that. I also wanted a vibrant dance community and a strong international relations program, since it's always been a dream of mine to do global work either in business, politics, or media. Naturally, I started with a list of the Ivies, but found that only 2 or 3 of them really made sense. Columbia did not have a great international relations program. Cornell was crazy cold and has one of the highest suicide rates in the country, no thank you. Harvard is exclusive, and actually I heard from one of my buddies that being a first year there is quite miserable. Dartmouth is in New Hampshire. UPenn also lacking in terms of IR, although the Huntsman program is really cool. So that leaves Princeton, Brown, and Yale. Brown doesn't have a great international relations program either, but it's known for being the happiest Ivy. They have a ton of breaks, you get to design your own major, great parties. It's really hard to knock on Brown, low-key. In the end though, I only applied to 2 Ivies, Yale and Princeton. Truth be told, I almost didn't even apply to Yale because when my mom and I visited, it was crazy hot on that day. The tour guide showed up late. I was really turned off by the fact that the dorms or the residential colleges are located right next to the street, so you hear all this traffic and noise, and there's kind of air pollution. I also remember that our tour guide took us to this one residential college called Ezra Stiles College, and was talking about how this unique architecture, blah, 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 blah. And I just remember thinking to myself, who in the right mind would ever want to live in this Flintstone-looking prison? Seriously, guys, I wasn't going to apply, and at the very last minute, my sister made me submit an application. She was like, you already have all the necessary essays. All you have to do is write this why Yale won, 200 words. Just do it, Kev. Before I continue, I'd like to mention a quick word about grade inflation and deflation at some of these top universities. So Harvard and Yale have pretty serious grade inflation. The average grade is a B, and if you don't like that grade, I've also heard of and seen my peers argue with a teaching assistant or professor for a better grade. Yes, sounds crazy, but I have seen it happen. Some schools, on the other hand, have a bell curve and grade deflation. The worst of these would be UChicago, where fun goes to die, Cornell, which is the easiest Ivy to get into but the hardest to graduate from, and Princeton. Princeton is really, really academically challenging, and for some crazy reason they have exams after winter break instead of before. Those are the only 3 schools that are said to be harder than Exeter. Additionally, the academic rigor will depend on your major, of course. Personally, I think that STEM majors just require more. I mean, you can look at the number of credits required, like neuroscience at Yale requires 20 credits versus East Asian Studies, which only requires 12 credits. Each credit is 1 course. Students usually take 4 to 5 credits per semester. Here's my full college list. Georgetown has a great IR program and arguably even better than many of the Ivies. Duke is warm. Vanderbilt, also warm, ranked as one of the happiest colleges in America. I put in Williams because I thought it would be a good idea to have at least one liberal arts college, and finally the University of Florida. Even today I look at this list and I'm pretty proud of it because I would have been very happy going to any of these schools. All right, decision time. My first 5 responses were all waitlists and rejections. First it was MIT at the end of March. Rejection. Then Stanford. Also rejection. I mean, in hindsight, this kind of makes sense because I applied to those schools as a creative writing major. MIT and Stanford have some of the best creative writing programs in the country, but I didn't quite have the evidence or awards to back up that narrative. All right, so next up, Duke, waitlisted. Vanderbilt, also waitlisted. The big shocker was when I got waitlisted by the University of Florida. At this point, I'm just kind of mentally preparing myself for the possibility that I just might work as a janitor in my parents' Chinese restaurant for the next couple of decades. But all hope was not lost because I got into Williams and they gave me a ton of financial aid, which was super duper cool. I actually have a friend from my dorm who goes to Williams, and apparently the academic rigor is so high because the class sizes are really small. I honestly think that quality of education at Williams is probably higher than that of Yale's. A week later, I also get an acceptance letter from Georgetown. At this point, I'm leaning Georgetown over Williams. DC is warmer and better international relations program. Georgetown also does a lot of business kind of stuff that I'm interested in. But the real kicker came on April Fool's Day, 2016, when I found out that I got into both Princeton and Yale. I have to tell you guys the story of how I found out. As you know, with senior spring, everyone's mentally checked out. My buddy Pranay and I, it was the middle of sports block, but we didn't really do sports anymore. We just kind of showed up, left after 10 minutes, and came back to our dorm. Pranay would watch Gossip Girl, and I would play League of Legends, of course. I literally remember I was in the middle of a league ranked game when I got the email. I tabbed out, opened the email, but because my headphones were on and the volume was so loud, I almost jumped out of my seat. There was like the boolah, boolah, like We Are Yale's song, and it was just so loud I like threw down my headphones. 30 seconds after that, I just started celebrating. I hugged my good friend Pranay and started bragging about it in my League of Legends match. I was like, I just got into Princeton and Yale, suckers. And they were like, cool, can you gank our lane? After I let the moment sink in, I called the parents. Totally different reactions from the two of them. I called my dad first. Dad, I got into Princeton. No, you didn't. Alright, so this is partially my fault because I pranked them about MIT and told them I got in when I did not get in. So I had to call this man back and I was like, no, Dad, seriously, I got into Princeton and Yale. I didn't hear anything on the line for a few moments. And then all of a sudden my dad turns to my uncle who's cooking next to him. You won't believe what just happened. Kevin got into Princeton and Yale. Next, I called my mom. She was working at this other Chinese restaurant, and when I called her, I told her the good news. I just heard a thud and just immediate sobbing. My mom was crying on the ground next to the phone. When she finally calmed down, she said, you know, your Yima, your aunt, was watching over you, and your grandpa and your grandma, they were watching over you too. Honestly, that's facts, man. And this is a great lesson for my future descendants, because if you guys don't bring my favorite roast pork buns and pour at least a bottle of wine over my grave, I'm not giving you guys any blessings. Don't forget to burn fat stacks of cash, because I need that in heaven. I was invited to the revisit day for both Princeton and Yale. Princeton was first. It was a long trip, but well worth it because the experience was phenomenal. My favorite part was, of course, the dance showcase. It was mind-blowing. The choreo was so clean. There were so many different dance groups, and the one that I most wanted to be a part of was called DZAC, and it's this hip-hop, contemporary, fusion dance troupe, and sometimes they travel and perform. So I was just like in love with that idea. I guess the only downside was that my host, who was this skinny kid with an afro, he basically just studied the whole time while I was there. Even after the pre-frosh events, and I came back and it was late into the night, early hours of the morning, he was still studying because it was midterm season. But I was still totally in love with Princeton. And the morning before I left, I visited the Princeton bookstore and just dropped at least $120 on the Princeton sweatshirts, the mugs. I went back to Exeter and I called my sister and told her, that's it, I'm choosing Princeton. I don't even need to go visit Yale. And she said, no, go visit Yale. It's free, you get to skip school. Please go, just visit. I relent. I went to Yale's revisit day with really minimal expectations, but experienced a total change of heart. I spent a good amount of time chatting with my buddy Jay, who was in the same dorm as me at Exeter. He was a year older. And basically he told me that if you want to get a 4.0, study every night at Bass Library and go to a great graduate school, there's plenty of people just like you. You can find tutoring help. And if you want to go out 4 nights a week and drink and have fun, party, there's also people just like you. And then every kind of person in between. What really pushed me over the edge though is that night, it was a Tuesday night, I remember, and this is kind of embarrassing to admit, but there was a little party, a little getty. So all of the Exeter pre-frosh who had just been admitted and all of the Yale freshmen who had just graduated from Exeter, we ended up drinking together, taking shots, and they told us more and more about Yale. This was really exciting, by the way, because there's no parties at Exeter, no one really gets drunk, things like that. Maybe like less than 5% of the school gets in that kind of trouble. But back to the Getty. All the older kids just told us how chill and happy they were at Yale. even though it was the middle of midterm season. And yeah, they showed us a really good time. So I pulled a Rory Gilmore and chose Yale over Princeton. My sister makes fun of me for it all the time, even though, quite frankly, it's 95% her fault. It was not a super easy decision because I just been so gung-ho about Princeton and they gave me more money. But Yale has better food and they appealed to my ego. My admissions officer wrote me a handwritten note and attached it to my college acceptance letter. I think I still have a photo of it, so let me pull it up for you guys. Yeah, there it is. Thank you, Mr. Levitt. That kind of stuff, I think it does make a difference. Finally, guys, the golden question. Was it all worth it? Junior year was hands down the hardest year of my life. Sleep deprivation coupled with constant stress. Not to mention, that summer my dad got injured and I had to work in the Chinese restaurant in the back where I was cooking, frying rice, standing 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, all throughout the summer for about 90 days. I remember that entire year I was just perpetually jittery from the caffeine. It was really common for me to get these stomach aches because of how acidic the coffee was. In 2015, I was averaging 4 cups of coffee a day. One at 9 in the morning, another at noon during lunchtime, a third one at dinner around 6 p.m. and then a fourth one around 9 p.m. when I started doing my homework. Throughout the day, I'd sneak naps wherever I could, in the music building, in the bathroom, in my friend's dorm. More than once, I caught myself asleep at the piano with my face pressed against the keys and it would leave like these indents on my cheeks. Was it worth it? Short answer, yes. I probably shaved a year off of my life from working so hard, but at the end of the day, I do think it was worth it because this was not just about me, right? It was about validating the 20+ years my parents worked at a Chinese restaurant so I had a chance at a better education. It was about proving to my aunts and my extended family that the American dream is still alive and well, even in 2020. That life does go on. And even as a Chinese American boy, I had what it takes. And besides, guys, honestly, I really enjoyed Yale. It was a lot of fun. Maybe too much fun. But that's a story for another time.